And I am excited to be here right now. Now, listen, we know 2020 has been a crazy year. And I know I say that every single time I get on here and address you all, and that's because it has been. I was just telling a lot of the people I work with that if a chicken and a half goat was standing outside right now clapping with a squirrel with cornrows, I would believe it because that's how crazy this year has been. That's right. That's right. That's how crazy this year has been. So thank you everybody for tuning in and for watching us because we're excited. We come to you because there can truly be no peace if there is no justice.
That's right.
There can truly be no justice because we're gonna make sure that there is no peace. So until we get the justice that we deserve, and we're not just this is bigger than Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, Emmanuel, the young brother down in Florida, Elijah McClain, the young brother Jonathan Price that we just found out from Texas. This is bigger than all of that. This is bigger than our representatives, than our churches. This is bigger than our theology. This is bigger than where we find ourselves politically. This is a moment in time that we cannot pass up. So I'm excited to have one of my good friends moderate this conversation. Brother Al, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Rob. How you doing?
Doing well. Well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the State Director for No Justice, No Peace, Mr. Al Womble. Thank you, Al. Take it from here.
Thank you, Rob. And Rob, I also want to say thank you for all the work that you and I have done together across the state. You know, you've been a tremendous partner for us to go on this long journey from Council Bluffs, Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, Clinton, Muscatine, Iowa City, back to Des Moines, and then back up again to Fort Dodge, all so that we could try and register people to vote. Because I can't think of anything that is more pressing in our time right now than people making sure that they get out to vote. If you never thought it was important before, by God, it certainly is important now. Because I certainly didn't get up at 5 o'clock this morning and go down to the Polk County Auditor's office for my health. It was cold, it was dark, and my bed was warm. I wanted to stay home. But I realized I had a more important duty, and that is to vote. So that's where I want to start off with all of you tonight. And I'll start off first with you, Representative Thede, and then I'll run to Representative Wilburn, Roz Smith, and Nikhil. But first, you know, we all know that voting is extremely important. It is one of the most sacred duties that we have as citizens of this great democracy to make sure that we are expressing our choice for the policymakers that will represent us. But why do you feel that sometimes it is a difficult task to sometimes get people out to vote? And I'll turn to you first, Representative Thede.
You know, I am so glad that you asked that question. There's several things. So let's start off with, first of all, for a lot of people, and I won't say for all, but for a lot of people, just getting there is a process. If you don't have a car, if you don't have a lot of money, if you have children, those are things that make it difficult to get to be able to vote. Now, we can do that as number one. Obviously, you can fill out any ballot request. First of all, we have to make sure that you are registered. Fill out an absentee ballot request, and then they can mail that in. Now, a lot of people do like going to the polls because they feel that that is the best way to cast their vote. But when you're in a situation like I described earlier, I think it's important that, and I hope people understand that even though you may be in that difficult situation, what I'm hoping is that people
Uh-oh, I think we lost Phylis for a little bit.
Looks like we lost
Yeah.
Phylis. Do you want me to pick it up from there, Al?
Absolutely.
It kicked
No,
me
there
out.
she is.
This is
Yeah, I'm back. It kicked me out for a minute. I don't know why. But at any rate, I think the important thing is that we've got to do a much better job of getting out and talking to our people of color, not just during an election year. We've got to do it all the time. Wherever where black folks are at, that's where we got to start talking about it. And I think that will help drive that issue. Now, this year, I will say Trump has definitely given us the reason to vote. And that is because of his stance or lack of a stance on how African Americans and people of color are treated. But that's not going to always be the case. He's not going to always be there, but we'll always have this issue. So just because he leaves doesn't mean it goes away. It just means that we have got to work harder, making sure that people of color get out and vote. And I want to leave it there.
Representative Wilburn, what do you think is maybe one of the challenges that we have in order to make sure that we're getting people out to vote?
To add on to what Phylis was saying, part of it has to do with people who just feel disenfranchised. Yes, some people can't get there, and the challenges and whether you can, you've got to work a certain shift, and if you're not able to early vote, but just getting people motivated to vote. We have to do a better job of making sure people know that your vote makes a difference, especially during a presidential year at the local level. Your vote makes a difference on whether your water's clean, whether you have water. Is there a bus system? Are the roads clear? Do you have an opportunity to, if you're trying to start a business, do you have an opportunity to get a loan, or is there going to be some type of discrimination going on and a way for you to make a complaint? So we need to connect the issue to let people know what happens in your everyday life is impacted by elections. And I think Phylis is also right that lasting justice and equitable opportunities, it can't just be about one election, and it can't just be about one candidate. We can't say, well, we got Phylis in there, we got Akeo, we got Roz, we got Ross. It goes beyond the individuals. You've got to have a block of people that are willing to vote your interests, and it goes more than one just election. It's a lot of work, but there are people who are in office. I mean, my colleagues here, they work very hard, and all the efforts that all of you have done and are doing at trying to influence the vote, that helps us when we're in the House. But we need more than just us there, and we need to get some folks in the Senate. We need to get a Christina Blackcow from the indigenous community. We need to get some of our folks that are in the Latino community out there. We need to get Charles up in Fort Dodge to help us get some numbers till we have some more representation. I'll stop because I know the others will pick it up, but I just wanted to get that point in that it's got to be more than just one election, and we've got to do a better job letting people know what happens in your daily life is affected by people who go in and vote, whether you do or not. Those that are waving Confederate flags, those that are saying that they disagree with the notion of privilege, that they're going to vote. So what are we going to do? I'll stop.
No, thank you, Representative Wilburn. That's a great point, and I think Representative Thede also brought up a great point. I kind of want you to expound on this, Roz. Is that we need to get out in these communities more than just during election time. So can you talk about the value of that, and what's the way that we can do that in a meaningful way to some of the different communities that not only we are involved in, but some of the ones that Representative Wilburn had mentioned?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues is we haven't given anybody something to vote for, right? We've oftentimes missed and many people where they are. There's a disconnect between sometimes policy that's put out there and how that actually impacts the day-to-day lives of the people that live on the ground, regardless of where you stand, right? So, for instance, in Waterloo, I live in one of the most diverse communities in the state, and I can tell you that regardless of what you think about free college, for the young people in my community, that is so disconnected from their day-to-day life, right? My goal sometimes is to help them graduate high school alive. Right? So when there's that disconnect, when we're talking about policies that I'm not even privy to because nobody in my family's gone to college, they're unattainable. We have to talk about real policy that really impacts the day-to-day life of real people. I think that's been one of the biggest disconnects. And I think the way that we do that, though, is by really revamping the system to work for the people. It hasn't. If you look at what's happening right now in this country, people need help. People need supported. People need uplifted. And we have to make sure that we do a great job of pushing forward policies that talk about those individuals who are able to quarantine at home and spend $500 every 2 weeks on groceries, and those people who could not afford to quarantine because to stay at home and buy groceries with their family is overly expensive and a burden that most people can't support. We have to talk about the real issues that real people are dealing with. And I think we have to do a better job of talking about that every day, not just on the cycle. And that's where we are right now. And I think it's going to take a lot of pressure and a lot of pushing on the system to get it to where we're talking about everyday people's issues every day and not once every 4 years.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You know, Representative Kale, you and Creative Visions have done a tremendous amount of work in the Des Moines community, dealing with the trials and tribulations that people are facing every single day. You know, what are some of the things that you feel are the needs that we need to make sure that we are addressing so that we're connecting with this community? Because I know that you have done a lot, and I'd want to get your point of view on what more we can do.
First of all, I want to give honor to God. Secondly, I want to thank you, and Rob, and Mark, and all those involved with No Justice, Peace. I want to thank you for inviting us on to be able to express. I will be brief. You know, Al, there was a young man who, loved his mother, wanted to get his mother a special gift. So he went to this pet store and he found this bird, beautiful bird. Bird could speak 3-4 different languages. So he bought the bird and sent it home to his mom. He couldn't wait to get home for Mother's Day. He finally made it home, got there for Mother's Day, went in the house, and the first thing he looked for was the reaction of the mother and the bird together. And he looked all the way around the house and he went to his mom. He said, "Mom, where's the bird?" And Mom looked at him and said, "Hey," she said, "we're going to have a good dinner. I bet that bird tastes good." And he turned around and he looked at his mama. He looked at his mom and said, "Mom, how could you cook that bird?" And she looked at him. She said, "Well, you sent him to me." He said, "That bird was smart. That bird could talk. He could speak 3 languages." Mama looked at him and said, "Well, the bird should have said something then." Yeah. One of the things that we have to look at, if we don't use our vote to speak up now, then we can't worry about who's cooking us. We can't stand up and holler about this didn't happen and that didn't happen. You know, when we talk about our needs in the community, like you mentioned, about individuals and the needs that we have, if we're looking at the poor, those who are homeless, if we're looking at students who right now their lives are playing Russian roulette with, when we're looking at individuals that especially women who still don't have equal pay for equal work, when we're looking at people of color that are still being oppressed, when we look at people of color who are still fighting the disparities and just trying to create a level playing field, if we don't use our vote as our voice, then we continue to lose. We're like that bird. You know, we continue to get cooked, and we have been continue to be cooked over decades, over centuries. And now we're looking at being able to speak up and say something. We're able to address our own needs in our own community. You know, it's a sad commentary that you have to take time away from your beautiful wife, Al, and Rob has to take time from his beautiful family. And individuals like Representative Wilburn, Representative Smith, Representative Thede, Representative, Gaines have to take time away from making changes in life and being proactive because we have not been allowed to speak out or we didn't see our value and our own worth. Right now, we are the icing on the election cake. If we go out and vote, we'll make the cake so sweet and feel and taste so good because we can literally say this election, we have made the difference. We are literally say this election, God bless it, we're the birds who spoke up and we did it in a multitude of languages and we made a difference.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Representative Kale. I mean, our vote is our voice, and that is our way to say that we are either pleased or displeased with what's going on in our community. And I don't know about the rest of you, but right now I'm highly displeased with the leadership that we have at the top level of this country and how they have treated, COVID. Even handling his own case has been unacceptable on every level. And speaking of COVID, right now, one of the things that we've seen throughout this horrible pandemic is that COVID has affected the Black community much more deeply than other communities. The disparities and the inequities that Black communities has faced across this country has unfortunately led to a much higher mortality rate amongst Black individuals than it has with almost any other category. And so what I want to ask you now is, how do we make sure that we address these disparities moving forward? And then also, I guess I'll leave this for a follow-up after this, but then what can we do as activists? What can we do as the civilian population to make sure that we are helping you as representatives deal with this? And this time I'll start with you, Roz.
Oh, man. No,
that's a lot, isn't it?
It is, but as I told her before we were logged on, I'm kind of on one today, right? And I think for me, it's COVID has shown nothing new in my community, right? I can tell you, right, I just got done reading about the University of Iowa and how they're going to do some things regarding equity and diversity training because of the executive order from our president. And COVID has shown us that as people of color in this country, we're being asked to always sacrifice more. I don't have so much more to sacrifice, My hairline is going. I'm spending the time away from my daughters. I'm getting death threats and death messages because people hate the things that we push for. I've sacrificed almost all that I have. And my ask is that what are others willing to sacrifice? If you want to move the needle forward, what are you willing to give up? The burden that minority people have carried to make sure that we can make sure that this structure can stay afloat is the point of exhaustion. But also, I'm almost on E when it comes to this. So it's shown me that yes, we are essential, but we are also expendable, right? And for me, I guess my level of tolerance is almost capped out. So it's a great question, Al, but I don't have a lot left for it. Mine is more a reflection of that's where I am and pushing that question back onto others and saying, what are you willing to give up? Because COVID has shown that if you're in the same boat with me, are you going to swim the same way I'm swimming? Mm-hmm. And it's yet to be seen. So while I may not answer your question, that's my reality, right? This is a safe space conversation, but that's where I'm at regarding it. What are we willing as a civilization, as a society, as Americans, right? If we're all Americans, how are we all willing to contribute? Because I can tell you, I feel like the contributions of people of color are not equitable.
No, I definitely hear that. We have gotten to a breaking point where a lot of us, you wake up in the morning and you feel such frustration. What do we do next? But when it comes to, some of those sacrifices that we might be able to see and what are some of the ways that we can, help move this country forward, Ross, I would turn it to you. What are some of the ways that we can try to deal with that? I agree with everything Ross said, but, what do you think would be our best way to attempt to move forward in this situation?
Well, I think.
I meant to say Ross Wilburn. Sorry.
No, you're good.
You got as many head injuries as me. Sometimes when you talk, your lips don't move right, and then it doesn't sound good. So, Representative Wilburn.
Anytime I can be confused with Ross Smith, it's an honor. Yeah, I think it does come back again to connecting the issues that impact us, impact you and your home, connect those with the elections and candidates. Some of the issues and the disparities that Ross Smith was talking about that affect the Black community, people of color, in terms of health issues, asthma and diet and exercise and maternal health. Those are some of the areas where you see disparities. But even with the coronavirus, even looking at who are the essential workers and who is working the jobs that pay lower wages, and you don't have access to health care, and even some just up in Waterloo there and Storm Lake, where some of the meat packing plants are, and what we require and demand in terms of public safety and food safety, and that's another reason to take a look at communities of color. Former Storm Lake City Councilwoman Sarah Huddleston from the Latinx community. She's that's District 11, I think. She's up for election, taking on a Republican incumbent. Those are the questions we need to ask, but not just of Democrats, of anyone who's running for office. It emphasizes in some ways why we are trying to get a Democratic majority back in the House, so that we can at least force the governor and if they're not able to get a majority in the Senate, to at least come to the table, as opposed to just pushing bills through without any question. And the governor right now, we have a solid director of the Department of Health and Human Services, but temporarily she's had added onto her plate public health. We're in a public health crisis. Public health in Iowa has been funding has been scaled down, and there's talk about the governor trying to make it a subdivision of the Department of Human Services. We need to have a robust public health department. Let's go ahead and move forward with getting a director in there so that we can emphasize public health, public education. But again, we can sit around and wonder, why is this happening? Be frustrated, or we can start asking the questions, and not just of us. Let's go to some of these other communities within our community and start asking those questions. If you are, if you're the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan group, if we can get folks start going to some of their meetings, asking them questions. The chambers of commerce. There are some communities that have Black business, that have Latina business, that have some indigenous communities that have business. What can we do to try and help them get on board with the chambers of commerce so they can start asking questions to change the conversation, to bring issues to front that people aren't thinking about? I think those are some of the things that, again, it goes back to there's no easy solutions, but we've got to try and get ourselves into positions to start asking the questions that are affecting us, and whether people realize it or not, whether if they're white and in the majority, that it's affecting them too.
Representative Wilburn, you brought up a very great point when it comes to essential workers. We in the Black community here in the state of Iowa make up 25% of the service workers, yet we are only 5% of the population. And I think COVID has shown the disparities that, are greatly affecting those kinds of workers. And Representative Mikhail, how do you feel that we can best turn this around? And in what ways do you think that current leader in our state maybe could do more to assist and help these workers?
I think to the point of, first of all, I believe that especially the representatives that you have, on this program and our colleagues have worked very hard, to assist the workers. We have supported union workers. We have supported our first responders. We have supported everybody that has been out there because of the fact that everyone knows that the Democratic Party strives to be the People's Party. Now, have we totally accomplished that? No. Are we still working on that? Yes. But I think we have to take another step now. We have to take another step of having some real conversations with our own party. We have to take steps to have real conversations with our constituents. We have to begin, if we're going to be able to help the workers, then we also have to go to our union partners and have some real conversations with them. Because we have to understand that racism exists and sexism exists in our areas and in our own party. We have to understand that once we start having these real conversations, then we arm ourselves, give us tools to be able to help our, constituents much better. Because once we have real conversation, and that starts across the board, then we have that real conversation in Davenport, Waterloo, Ames, Sioux City, and then we get on one page so that we're not lying to the workers. And we have to start being honest, even to the point we're taking a vote now in November out to be able to take the leadership of the House. That's what everyone's looking at this time.
Yes, sir.
The conversation is that helps us to stop the bleeding that is going on in Iowa right now. That's what that does, because we still don't have the Senate and we don't have the governorship. So we are able to stop some of the bills that will be presented and crafted from making it out of the House. Once we take the leadership, we'll be able to put the spin on it that we need to put on, and we'll be able to support the bills even that our colleagues across the aisle will do that will affect the workers and the working class people. But we'll be able to do that if we come out and everybody comes to vote. But it first starts with real conversation. We have to quit lying, and selling false hope. Because that's what happens in a crucial situation to when we don't understand that we're in a perpetual reactionary corrective mode. Because we're trying to support some lies that have been told when we need to start just telling the truth. No, this is what's going on. When we look at what Representative Smith went through to protect his workers in Waterloo, we have to understand he started telling the truth. No, people were dying, and he didn't blow smoke. He didn't play games, and that's able to get things done. We have to take on that type of demeanor and that type of responsibility. When you're going around, and I'll be quiet at this, but when you're going around, brother, and Al, and them, you're telling people go vote, and you get somebody walks up and they say, "Hey, I'm a worker and everything. I'm not going to vote. I don't see why I should vote. I don't even argue anymore. I say I agree with you. You shouldn't vote, because if you don't want to see your children safe, if you don't want to be able to deal with COVID, if you don't want to make a living wage, if you don't want to see your life get better, no, don't vote. Shoot, go home, but don't start crying either. Don't start crying when things don't go your way, or you get to talking about you ain't got Social Security, you ain't got no 401k, and your children come home talking about, Mom, Dad, I'm not learning nothing. When you, so, we have to quit. We got to follow example like Representative Smith. We got to follow example like Representative Thede and Representative Wilburn and others that say, hey, it's time to start telling the truth. I don't even tell people Columbus discovered America. That's one of the biggest lies we can talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I don't even tell people that the Native Americans were savages, or that the Pilgrims were some honest folk running around with some muskets. The racists. But anyway, we have to begin to start telling the truth, to say this is how we got here. This is how we're going to get out of this. And that's why we have to share that with workers that are there. That's why we need, and I apologize to Representative Smith because I should have been standing beside him, while he was there, giving him my support, but I couldn't make it. I had health reasons. Other people just were chicken, man. But anyway, the thing is, we got to be able to stand there with them, and I'll close with this, I promise. What happened at that storm that hit Cedar Rapids? We need to tell our story.
Yes.
You talking about Democrats came together? They took Representative Smith took a truckload down there, a semi, I understand. Ross did his thing. Al, you and Rob did your thing. Every Democrats went and cut trees and everything else, met with folk, but we were honest with folk.
Mm-hmm.
We supported the representatives that were there that were doing work. That's how we get people and make those changes, Al. That's how we convince folk that there is a difference and that this is the reality. The piece of legislation that Representative Smith came up, brother, I'm waiting for my check in the mail now. Now, the things that came up, when we started crafting that legislation, he started crafting it. He pulled us all in. We started working together. We all got in our lane and used our lane to get that legislation. That means in 12 days, we passed some unique legislation. Now, if that can happen in 12 days, just think it happened if we started telling the truth and we started supporting the people themselves. Just think where our workers would be at today.
But think about what it took from us, though, Kale, right? What it took from the 5 of us to get that done. And I think that maybe that's the crux of my frustration, right? Why do 5 people carry the burden for 150? Right? And I think it shouldn't take the ratio to get us to that point. It shouldn't take the ratio for us to see the level playing field, because I feel like the sacrifices that we make for survival are not the same sacrifices that other people make just to get through. And for me, Representative Wilburn, I love the makeup of the Iowa Legislative Black Caucus, because it shows that first and foremost, we're not a monolithic people. But secondly, there are those of us who have the hope and can see past the present to get to the future, and we need that vision. And so that's why I think our caucus is brilliant, and we're effective. And you guys always keep me level, because a lot of my frustrations come from the point where we have to start asking those questions. But man, I feel like the body of knowledge on these things is broad and vast. And part of the sacrifice is don't ask me how your comments are going to be portrayed when you want to post them on your website. Do the work yourself to know what's right and wrong to say, because we're not giving any information that's groundbreaking, right? This has been something we've been talking about for the past 401 years. So we're not at this spot by coincidence. This is intentional. And when I say sacrifice, it's sweet to pass a plan from a perfect union, but how many people besides the 5 of us really lost sleep that week? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like the frustrating part for me is, yes, we have to start having those conversations, but these roundtables were had in 1968, they were had in 1950, they were had in 1995, 1985, and 2005, and 2012, and we're still having the same roundtable conversations in 2020, asking Black folks and Latinx folks and our immigrant population to come out and vote when they were still let to die at plants that had union leadership. We need everybody to do better. Mm-hmm. Now, what are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to sacrifice maybe not being reelected to stand up for what's right? Right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm not raising $70,000, because as a Black candidate in Waterloo working on the campaign, I got to feed my family, and I'm going to sacrifice raising the dollars that may help me propel to higher office so my kids can eat. What are you willing to sacrifice? Right? It's sweet to spend 8 hours on the phone doing call time. I don't have the privilege to do that. I got to eat. My kids got to eat.
Absolutely. Now, Representative Thede, both Representative Smith and Representative Kao touched on some things I wanted to ask you about. I know what it's like to have the burden, to be a Black man in this world, trying to fight against systemic racism, trying to fight against, the glass ceiling. But I also know from just watching and learning and listening, that it is doubly hard when you are a woman and part of the Black community and the struggles that you have to face. So I would ask, what are the things that you would point out to people that, look, here's for how much further we have to go. Here's what we have to do to make sure that we're supporting our women of color in politics. And, how can we do better?
That's a great question. So to my brothers, Smith and Wilburn and Samad, I just want you to know that you are dealing with a queen. And you need to understand that.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. So with that crown on my head, there's a lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And let me relate something to you that happened just today, and this will be perfect. You'll get it. So I was talking with a gentleman today, and I was asking for his support, and he said to me, "I don't think so." He said, "Do you support Medicare?" And then he put, "I don't think so." So then I said, okay, how am I going to answer him? So I answered him back and I said, well, here's the thing. I want to clarify what you're saying. First of all, that's federal legislation that has to be done, Medicare for all. And I said, I can say I support it or not support it, but it doesn't make any difference because I can't vote on it, right? Mm-hmm. And then I said to him, I am a state legislator. So if you're talking about Medicaid, that's a whole different ballgame. So what I'm telling all of you is that part of the problem why it's so difficult is because many of us, and I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't know the difference between the two either until my mother got sick. And that's terrible to say. And I'm going to be honest, because I didn't have to deal with it before, right? So here's the deal. Before we can even have conversation, before we can even engage and have a dialogue about such things, and that was one example, we need to educate people on what certain terms are and how they affect us. What is the system that affects us? How's the system going to help me? And I am finding there's a lack of I don't want to say understanding, but a lack, well, that is, they're not quite sure what they're talking about. Now, I'm not mad at them about it, but you know what? This is terrible. We have to go back and re-educate. We have to educate, not re-educate. We have to educate people on what the system holds for us. And people get mad because they have the wrong idea. So as a woman, I'm going to tell you, as a mother, as a woman, as a legislator, you can ask my brothers in the legislative house. I'm super honest. I don't play. So when people ask me a question, they get what they get. And I want to go back to what Ross was talking about. You've got to be honest with people. You've got to tell them the truth. They're not going to get mad at you. All they're going to do is go, oh. And so from there, so here's my tutorial. We begin to talk to our family, our friends, people of color, about what these processes mean, why the system is the way it is. We've got to give them that language, because without that language, we can talk till we're blue in the face. And guess what? They're not going to get it. But now remember, I said I didn't know what it was until I got involved with it. Now, can you imagine if I had trouble? Imagine the people who are out there who have no idea what this is all about. We're asking them to vote, but they have no idea what they're voting on. So our thing, this is terrible. We've got to go way back and we got to start educating. So in a non-presidential year, this is our time to sit down with folks and say, okay, what don't you get about this? Or say, what would you like to know about this? And they'll say, oh, I know about this. Maybe they really don't. So I would like to see us do more of a tutorial so that people are really in the know. So conversation is great, but I can't conversate with you if you have no idea of what I'm talking about. All right. So I think that's the best way to handle this. It's great, like I said, to have that conversation, but you and I are going to be on a different plane. And so until we do that, that's the only way it's going to work.
Well, I will say right now that I tip my glasses to you, my queen.
Thank you.
And thank you for giving us that answer. Now, real quickly, because we are running out of time here, but one of the things I've always said about elections that sometimes drives me nuts. Y'all get fired up for the elections. They're big and they're sexy and they're interesting, and oh, look what he said and what she did. And then after the election is over with, we all go, "Whew, that was hard. Let's go home and sit down."
Right.
I believe that part of our job as activists, as people who really care, for those of you who are tuning into this program and they are watching this, the next level is, how do we support these Black representatives at the State House so we can continue to accomplish things? And I'll start with you, Representative Wilburn. What are some of the things that we as activists can do in order to make sure that we're supporting you while you're up there? And we are running short on time, so give us the 60-minute or the quick answer there, but the mic is yours, sir.
Okay. First, I would say, if you're not familiar with the process, each one of us spends time informing, educating people about the process. There are a lot of advocacy groups out there, and some of them have paid lobbyists that spend a lot of time in Des Moines and then conversely in Washington, D.C., just providing information. And so if we can work to, if we can help inform you about the process or connect you with other groups who have similar interests, if you're willing to, you may have a group together. If you're willing to talk to another group, Ames Black Lives Matter, I pointed out to them some groups in Ames that they might want to connect with, and they followed up. They reached out to the NAACP. They reached out to the League of Women Voters. They reached out to a group that gets together every Friday called Drinking Liberally, just to talk, because I knew they had some areas of interest. One in particular, mental health care. And so, because there's only 5 of us and we only have so much time, but we're aware of some of those groups that are out there. If you're willing to at least have a conversation with some of the other groups, then it's not just your group coming forward. You get multiple groups coming forward with the same issue. And I think that can help broaden the message. And once other legislators seeing multiple lobbying groups and multiple community groups coming about healthcare and education, we can go from playing defense on everything to being proactive about these issues. And I'll stop right there.
No, that's a good point. One of the things I've found is, unions have a lobbying group. The healthcare has a lobbying group. There are different lobbying groups, but there is no lobbying group for the Black community. So what I actually turn to you, Representative Smith, how can No Justice, No Peace be the lobbying group from the Black community? How can we step in and help and advocate? And as Representative Thede said, educate people so we can move this process forward.
Well, I think the first thing is you can't stop. I think we learned through this process that the election, right, is the first step. And a lot of times, like you said, we feel as though we get to election day and it's over, we can rest. But this is really phase 1, right? Accountability starts after the election. Pushing for the things that you were promised after the election, ensuring that you have funding available, right? You can't stop fundraising just because the election is over. Those dollars equate to having somebody at the Capitol on a daily basis who can advocate for your interest and also collaborate and find allies with similar interests. For instance, and then I'll be done with this, social justice has somehow become a synonym of racial justice, and they are not the same thing. Right. Access to mental health in Waterloo is just as sparse as access to mental health treatment in Grundy County or in New Hartford or in Adel, Iowa. It's hard to get it. That's an allied interest. Partner with those groups across the state, come together, bring your resources together, and bring that policy, right? Bring that topic to the forefront as a broad base, as a broad coalition with broad reach and far resources that enable you to have power, because power without control is anarchy and control with no power is futile. You need both. And I think collaborating with entities that have similar interests, like Representative Wilburn said, is your best tool to have quick and effective change in the legislature.
We step into this next year, Representative Akeo, and they talked about different groups collaborating to address specific interests. What would you turn to these different groups that may collaborate and say, these are the interests I want to make sure that you address?
One of the things that we have to understand is that your voice is our voice. If we hear from you, then we ought to carry your voice, into what we do as far as crafting laws, legislation, so we can do that. But one of the things that will help us with all the groups that we collaborate with, I don't care what ethnicity, what gender, what religion, because it's going to take us all to bring this together. But we need to show up and stand up. When we're dealing with an educational issue, we need to be able to call no justice, no peace, and say we need to fill the gallery, if that's possible, because COVID is still going. But if it is, we need to fill the gallery. And the difference is, and I just said it quickly, the difference is that when we have gun bills that come up, the gallery is full. Only full of individuals, and the law was passed where they can come up and carry concealed weapons now. But when we talk about education, you look up in the gallery, it looks like a ghost town. We have to show up when we're talking about mental health. We have to show up when we're talking about education. We have to show up, and it just doesn't have to be black people. All of us need to show up. We need to come in and show a unity with one another. If we do that, then the voters will be able to voice. Not only that, individuals will show other representatives that this is an important issue that we didn't need with. And that's what we need to be able to see. Our relationship out with no justice, no peace has to become even tighter and closer. As with you, NAACP, with ACLU, with every group that is out there standing for change, not for Black Lives Matter, for you name it, any white organization, Latino organization, we need to come together and look up there and see a gallery of people when we're dealing with issues. That's all you gotta do is stand there and sit there, and hey, that will energize us. You see what happened in sports? They doing it without the fans, and now they got it. So with the technology, they got fake fans. They got the voices and everything else. Why? Because it motivates the players. Let us 5 look up one day and see all 4 galleries full. Boy, the motivators, boy. We'll get talking. Shoot, we might even run up the aisle. Who knows? But anyway, the motivation is there. We need you to say to us, this is our concern, so we can do the fighting. And that needs to come from everybody that is fighting for change.
And that is absolutely excellent. I've said before, and I'll say it again. If you don't help make the sandwich, don't complain about the flavor. So, Representative Thede, I'd turn it to you for final remarks on this issue.
Okay. Yeah, and so here's what I've actually started doing this last year. One of the things, when we had some really nasty legislation going through, like the voter suppression bill, I had all the different groups that I'm a part of back here in Davenport, and I called them and I said, here's the legislation that's going to go, that we're fighting against. And so I really believe a good phone tree is important, because each of those people that I contacted, they were able to contact somebody else. And then that way we are having this conversation quickly. very
Hmm.
quickly. And so that's what's really good. Another thing, but since COVID has been more difficult, one of the other things I would like to see happen is that we started doing going to homes, going to a house, sitting down with someone. So I would go to a person's house and sit down
Yes.
and talk with family members and talk with people, or go to a bar or wherever it may be. Now, I know that's more difficult with COVID, but once that's over with, we can do that. So, and Ross says this a lot, we got to meet people where they are. So the best thing to do is that we've got to bring this down to a different level. Yes, we can see all those groups, but not everybody's going to feel comfortable with all those groups, and they don't feel like their voice is being heard. So let's get those groups out. Let's, as legislators, we can be the voice while they're bringing those people together and letting them know what's happened. And they can say, you know what, my legislator, we talked to my legislator today, and here's what he or she said. And so I see that as a way of making sure that we get the ground game at the very bottom level so that people know that we're out there working for them. And that's all I have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, my queen, leading us in this. And, it is true that, when you talk about meeting people where we are, that's why the great Reverend Rob Johnson and I traveled to Council Bluffs, Sioux City, Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, Muscatine, Clinton, Iowa City, back to Des Moines, and then back up again to Fort Dodge, because we were trying to meet people where they are, and that is what No Justice, No Peace is about. Having those difficult conversations like Akeo talked about, making sure that we're helping to make sure that politicians are held accountable, like so many of us has talked about.
Right.
That is part of what No Justice, No Peace is about.
Right.
Help support No Justice, No Peace, and help support us be the arm, the active arm of these state representatives, so that we can get people involved, so we can pack those galleries, so we can do those phone bankings, and we can do those letter writing campaigns, so that other people up on the Hill realize the thing that these 5 people are talking about matter to a heck of a lot more people than you see right here.
Right.
What I will also say to you, ladies and gentlemen, is that my good friend Roz Smith, who is a former GQ model, is correct that this effort is going to take funding. We need you to help support No Justice, No Peace, because I'm very serious about making sure that I show up there again. And I will also let you know, No Justice, No Peace has another tour that we are planning here towards the end of October to help push voting, to help push early voting, and to make sure people have a plan to get their ballots turned in. I know that we're at the end of our time, ladies and gentlemen. So first of all, I want to thank all the great representatives on call here with us. Representative Akeo Abdul Samad, who I often think is, my father from, another dimension. I want to thank Representative Charles Smith, who goes out and causes trouble for me, or with me. I want to thank Representative Ross Wilburn for not only helping me out so many times and giving me great advice and let me call him whenever I want, but also has one heck of a good haircut. And thank you so much to Phylis Thede for joining us from back in my home area. So I'm hoping that the next time I am back in your way, we can go enjoy some Rudy's Tacos finally.
Oh, yeah.
And make sure that we get ourselves some Whitey's ice cream, because when you go there, that's what you're supposed to have.
That's the law.
That's the law. It is written somewhere. And I will say I also love Phylis Thede because she has the same first name as my mom, my great Phyllis Womble, my inspiration to make sure that I get up and stay involved in politics. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you all once again for joining us here on No Justice, No Peace. Stay tuned as we have more of these programs every upcoming Monday. Make sure that you support these great representatives. And now is your time to vote. Make sure that you have a plan and you get that ballot turned in so that you can't sit there and say, hey, I'm going to complain about this sandwich because I helped make it, gosh darn it. And I'm going to let you know this needs some more this needs a little less ham in it. And it certainly doesn't have anything that rhymes with rump in it. So please make sure you support No Justice, No Peace. Get part of making that sandwich. And thank you all for joining us tonight. Everybody, have a great night, and thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody.
Vote, vote, vote,
Vote, vote,
vote.
vote, vote,
Vote,
vote.
vote, vote, vote.